So the question is, why is no one anywhere in the world telling you the truth and telling you to prepare? I will tell you that I had a network, one of the big three, a network official actually tell me in the last 2 years, Glenn, listen, we all know what's coming. And this is a quote, but we have a responsibility not to tell the American people because they'll freak out. I couldn't believe I was hearing that. Needless to say, the rest of the meeting didn't go well. Our economy is fragile and everyone treats you like you're a moron. All it takes is one incident the size of September 11th. You remember how much damage that did to our economy? One terror attack, one country's banks to go south, one huge natural disaster, civil unrest. It's all combining. And eventually it will be Thelma and Louise, and we go over the edge. Let me give you a timeline of some of the major natural disasters since 2000. These are the big natural disasters since 2000, and some of them have been really impactful. Now the terror attacks. You add the terror attacks on top of them. All of these things, because the world is tied together financially, all of these things mean something. On top of that, you now add the major riots. These are the riots around the world. How about the financial meltdowns? The financial meltdowns add to those. And I can't, I'd be remiss if I didn't add the vampire attacks. So we have, of course, it's impossible to deny that something is going to happen. Maybe you want to live in the fantasy world where vampire attacks don't happen, but we are vulnerable to all of these things, except for the vampires. All of these things. We're more vulnerable now than ever before. The TSA just okayed knives on planes again. You can't bring baby formula or regular sized shampoo, but a knife is totally cool. Does that make sense to you? Our borders remain open. 10,000 people every day try to sneak through. Well, okay, that A, hurts the economy. B, more importantly, we know that Hamas is active in South America, trying to infiltrate the U.S. to try to commit a terrorist attack on our soil. Our energy grid remains vulnerable to attacks, or, the latest, we're supposedly going into the most active solar time in 100 years. That, in the 1800s and again in 1920, burned up all of the power lines. Cyber attacks are very real threats, but nobody even talks about those. You remember the electronic run on the bank that almost destroyed us in 24 hours? We have corrupt leaders who, I had an audience in just a little while ago. We did Tomorrow's Show today. It was college-age students. I asked them, how many of you believe the press? No one raised their hand. How many believe the politicians, GOP or Democrat? How many of you believe? Nobody raised their hand. How many kind of believe? Nobody raised their hand. And the people who are in Washington, not all of them, there's some really good people there. But you're telling me we don't have a few that could be compromised? We don't have any more Anthony Weiner and Weiner picks in there that could be compromised? We are extraordinarily vulnerable as a country and a people. Get hit with another terror attack, given that we're in an economy that is now borrowing more than anyone in the history of the world has ever borrowed. Ben Bernanke telling us $85 billion a month, $1 trillion every year. What? Help me out here. What's the problem? Financially, we're not just weaker than we were 10 years ago. America's problems are bigger in size and scope than any nation has ever faced in the history of the world. Now, the president and John Boehner both said, Republican and GOP, no immediate debt crisis in America. Well, I got to tell you, I'd like to vacation in the make-believe land that they're living in Washington, but I don't want to live there. The numbers don't lie. More than $16 trillion in debt. The Fed printing, pumping, digitizing another trillion every single year. It's actually 1.1 trillion. The government was spending $30.5 billion in the first 5 months of this year. Obamacare is set to add $6.2 trillion to America's long-term debt, according to a GAO report. And the GAO came out yesterday and said, by the way, you remember how we're going to reduce your premiums on insurance? GAO came out and said they're going to go up by 203%. And the tax increases that we had to have to get this under control, the ones that everybody felt, even though it was only supposed to be a tax on the rich, that's already gone. They've already spent all of that for the entire year. It was gone within the first month. Despite the tax hikes, the government debt has increased $36 billion this year, more than it did last year in the same time period. We're weak, we're broke, and our citizens are underprepared.
Are you ready? Do you have what it takes to not only survive hard times, but also thrive in them? In times like these, the most valuable currency we have is food and food reserves. It is more precious than gold, oil, and cash. Food is our greatest dependency, because when you're hungry, nothing else matters. You know it, and I know it. You can't control earthquakes, floods, or the real estate meltdown. But if you have food, you have personal solutions to how these things affect you. Register right here, right now, and order your 6 free meals so you can truly discover what the currency of the future and your freedom taste like.